the Delingpod with me, James Delingpole, and I am so excited and delighted about this week's guest. His name is Christopher Hope. He is the senior political...
No, well, you can call me that, or anything you like, really. I'm the Telegraph's chief political correspondent and its assistant editor.
Well, that sounds pretty good.
Is that enough?
Chief political correspondent, and you've just got a new job, which is...
Well, not that new, but for the past 6 months, I've been the lobby chairman, so my job is to help journalists, about 120 or so journalists in covering politics, liaise with the executive, with the government, and get them prompt briefings and trying to hold the man to account, James.
Yes. Well, I was on the Telegraph for many years, and I always used to think about the lobby journalists and the political editors and stuff, that they got far too excited about the political process and they revered MPs too highly.
SO24, these kind of things.
Well, it seems to me that lobby journalists tend to go native. They form a kind of Stockholm syndrome relationship.
There's a
with
bit of
the
that.
MPs.
I mean, we are meeting in the lobby room in the House of Commons, aren't we? We should describe for your listeners.
Describe it. Go on.
Well, it's wood-panelled, as you might expect. It's got names on boards behind me of previous lobby chairmen, and many of them have been very senior people who went on to great things.
Like Trevor Kavanagh of The Sun and...
Adam Bolton's there.
Adam Bolton, blimey,
Gary
yes.
Gibbon. And this is a room where, when Parliament's sitting, of course it's parade, we can come on to that if you like, I chair a meeting with the official spokesman of the PM, who then briefs us on whatever the PM thinks, and we can ask him whatever we like about anything in government. So it's a privileged position of being able to ask anything you like of the executive, and I try and make that happen.
And so who is the PM's official?
He's called James Slack, but we don't say his name. We just say the PM's official spokesman, because he's speaking on behalf of the entire government. It's not really about him. In America, you have the named spokesman for Donald Trump, who becomes quite a famous person, Kellyanne Conway.
Yes, I enjoy those conferences.
But we don't film this. It's all done off camera.
Right. And
there's a convention that we say the PM's official spokesman rather than naming him, because it's the person he's speaking. He's basically the mouthpiece of the Prime Minister.
And do you get stuff from him that you wouldn't get from elsewhere? I mean, is he honest with you? Is it the formality?
I think he's on. Yeah, he tells it like it is. I mean, he does his best within the limited way he can. He can't do politics, so he can't do. We can say to him, will MPs be whipped tonight to vote for the MV4, the fourth meaningful vote, which I'm sure is what Boris Johnson was planning to offer to us next month. But he can't do any of that. He does purely on what the government says, what the government's doing.
Right.
And the political questions are for someone called Rob Oxley, who's the political secretary. And he briefs us after PM questions once a week, and then sends around political. So the two mouthpieces are political and some government, civil service.
Now, you are. I've just done your excellent podcast.
Yes, Chopper's Brexit Podcast.
Chopper's Brexit Podcast, and God, I so envied you. You've got a team. You've got
I have
staff.
a team. Yes,
you've got people who do the sound levels.
Thea Ludis, a producer. Elliot Lampitt on sound.
Well,
they're all here, aren't your guys? Aren't they all here?
Yeah, right.
I'm looking at you. There's no one else around you.
It's just me. It's got that homemade feel.
It's the Delingpod. It has a different attraction. People like that.
Yeah. Yes. It definitely has a different vibe.
Yes.
And you kind of. You sort of script it. I mean, you block out roughly what you want people to say.
Yes.
Whereas I do no, you wouldn't guess this, but I do no prepreparation at all for my.
But you got
podcast.
my name right, so you looked at the name is correct.
No, it was just I had it in my head already.
Yes, it was there.
Yeah, well, because
no googling.
There's sort of mnemonic, Chopper. Okay, so that name's Christopher Hope. Yeah, so it was easy. Actually, funny you mentioned that. One of the weird things about Lyme disease, which I'm recovering from, and I didn't talk about it because it's actually really boring. No, it's really, really boring. But one of the annoying side effects, I went through a period where I did not remember anybody's name, even people I know really quite well. So I was very much reliant on my wife to kind of fill in at parties.
Lots of men have that to a degree, don't they? But not in extremists like you.
Oh no, it was really extreme. I mean, I could have come.
Men or women? I think it's a men thing.
Men, totally.
Is it men?
Yeah, totally.
I'm always being reminded of who people are by my wife. I can't.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of couples have a code that whereby I don't know who this person is. I don't know where we've met. And what the wife normally does is say, "Hello, I'm Sally or whatever," and I don't believe I know how you know my husband, and she does all the work.
Well, I always say who I am when I meet somebody, to try and trigger the response of who they are as well. I think it's just politeness.
No, I just know everyone's going to know who I am, Chris.
Do you? Because you're famous.
Yeah. I actually get accosted in the streets by.
Do you?
Yeah, by
you
strangers. Yeah, and it freaks me out every time it happens. I mean, it's nice.
Yes.
Because they are nice, but at the same time you think, oh my God, if they recognise me, then that means all the kind of Antifa. In fact, I know this for a fact because I was covering a Brexit Party rally.
Yes.
I met you there.
In Olympia.
I was
doing our documentary about Farage. I interviewed you for the thing.
Yeah. And the crowd outside, the unwashed mob, was saying, Delingpole knows nothing, Delingpole knows nothing, no. And I thought, I was sort of flattered and yet not.
There are some people in the Brexit debate who become this symbol. So I was at a UKIP before they kind of imploded, a UKIP conference, and Matthew Parris's name, who's a friend of mine, who I've known for decades and as a huge help to me in what I've tried to do in my career, is often raised as a person who completely winds them up. He completely winds up the Brexiteers. Matthew Parris, his name, he'd be booed. He's like a token. Perhaps you're the
Chris.
the Remainers, Matthew Parris.
Chris, you say this. You say this about Parris in a surprise voice. Have you actually read any of his many Spectator columns every other week on why
he can't stand Brexit?
He
called out Boris Johnson early, and I do remember back in 1999 he was an early hater of Tony Blair, way before most people piled in after the Iraq War.
It's interesting to remember, because one easily forgets that a lot of the people who've been unhinged by Brexit derangement syndrome, of Matthew Parris being an obvious example, people like A.C. Grayling, did have a previous life in which they were quite normal. I mean, I used to love Matthew Parris's columns.
I think Matthew is one of the finest writers in this country.
When he's not writing about Brexit, he is fantastic, and I'm sure there are people out there.
His honesty, his absolute honesty, just leeches through his writing. But on Brexit, he really can't get over it, and it's.
Yeah. So, do you have to? You're definitely much more sensitive and delicate, diplomatic on the subject of Brexit on your podcast than I am on mine. I mean, I'm full on, Remainers are complete loons and stuff.
Yes.
But surely the Telegraph's readership, we met some of your readers, or listeners, and they were as Brexit as they come.
The first time, yes, they are. I mean, I think if you're a reporter though, James, rather than a columnist, you have to get everyone to talk to you and give everyone a fair hearing as best you can. So I try and keep all of my personal views in the locker.
Yes, that must be difficult. I mean, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I could ever, for example, take David Lammy seriously, or pretty much any Labour MP apart from Kate Hoey and
Keir Starmer's a good bloke. Barry Garden. I'm now naming because it's very hard to get anyone to come on my podcast from Labour. Keir Starmer has come on. Barry Gardner, Chris Bryant, the ones who I think are grown-ups and don't see me as a stooge for the Tory party, but as a person trying to report Brexit. I've asked repeatedly Jeremy Corbyn and anyone from the Leeds office, no one comes on. Because what I worry about is the echo chamber that's created by Brexit, and to a more lesser extent sort of momentum and everything else, means that we just not have the two sides are not talking, and we have to keep talking and listening to different people's views all the time.
Yes, I disagree with that. I don't think the other side has anything to say of any interest whatsoever. I mean,
why could you vote Corbyn?
Sorry?
Why could you vote for Labour?
Why could I vote for him?
Give me 5 policies that make you vote for him.
Well, obviously,
I got some ideas.
He's got to bring back fox hunting, because that was so successful on the Theresa May's.
That was me who asked Jeremy Hunt that, for the podcast, for my Choppers Brexit podcast. I said to Jeremy Hunt during the campaign, would you bring back fox hunting? And he said yes. That was me.
Yeah,
and he's told me that was one of the 2 big mistakes he made in the leadership campaign, was answering me honestly.
And yet, for me, it's probably the only thing he's ever said which has been right. No, look.
Do you fox hunt?
Corbyn, unfortunately, I've currently been. I say currently. They think it's permanent. I've been banned by my family. I had a really bad hunting accident, and I bust up my collarbone and my ribs. But otherwise, I think fox hunting should be made compulsory. I think it's character.
I've never hunted in my life.
No, well, you probably can't ride a horse, can you?
No.
Well,
can you not use quad bikes? Can't we modernise it? Or drones.
There are
do it by drones.
There are footpacks in the north, and I believe in the Brixton hunt uses bicycles and they wear hoodies.
What are they hunting in Brixton?
Well, it's cats.
Oh, cats, not urban foxes.
Actually, there's loads of urban foxes in Brixton.
Yeah,
and Camberwell, which is where I used to live. Yeah, they're pests. In fact, they climb through windows and eat babies or threaten.
Was that an urban myth that was ever proven? That a fox bit a baby once?
Foxes have, I believe, hassled babies having climbed through the window. I don't think they've ever actually eaten one.
Have you ever bitten a child's foot?
Sorry?
Have you ever bitten a child's foot?
Well, I'm sure I've gnawed my children's feet. I mean, they're very...
In a playful way.
They're very biteable, babies.
They're edible, aren't they?
Yeah,
one mustn't eat babies, generally.
Absolutely, but that's all behind me. Oh, no, I've got grandchildren, so that will be... Yeah, I've got my first grandchild.
Gosh.
Oh yeah,
I'll keep that child away from Dave Delingpole until it's fully fledged into a grown up.
No. I'm going to love being a grandpa. I'm going to be really indulgent. So, Chris, Brexit. Do you think? I mean, I'm as you know, as I vouchsafed on your podcast, I am supremely optimistic about Brexit. I think that Boris is going to be great. I think, apart from the withdrawal agreement, which I worry about slightly. Actually, what's your thought on that? Do you think there's any danger the withdrawal agreement will come back?
I think he'll try and rebadge something and not call it the backstop, this agri-foods idea. The problem I've got with his plan is that it doesn't really deal with the other bits of the back of the document, which is equally appalling to Brexiteers.
That's what I mean.
The ECJ jurisdiction, the bill. There's going to be a shadowy, my quotes, committee running relations between the EU and Britain, run by two officials with no minutes, no way of vetting what they're saying, which will be setting out disputed areas of policy between the trading bloc and the UK, all sorts of things which are pretty much anti what Brexit is about in that document.
And those officials that you mentioned, we
don't know who they are.
We don't know the names, but presumably they're going to be Remainers because they're civil service and who will all remain.
I don't know what to say about that. I think I'm not sure they all remain. I've watered down my feeling of criticism for Ollie Robbins because I think he was doing what he was told.
Sir Ollie Robbins
to you and to me. But after the resignation on his list was announced on Monday, I just think, he was trying to interpret mixed messages from his boss.
He was not. He was a complete tosser. He write papers at Oxford in praise of Soviet.
Okay, Ollie Robbins is not
Russia.
a tosser. I think you can't say that, but I think we can say that there's a degree towards liking the status quo, which has been the EU for 40 years, and it's quite hard. You do need a disruptor. Boris Johnson, aided by his chief advisor Dominic Cummings and Michael Gove to a degree, to pull, kicking and screaming, the civil service into where it's going. But I do worry that your old friend Michael Gove says he would vote for Theresa May's deal just last week. Now, why is that?
No, I don't.
That worries me.
I don't understand why he's saying this stuff. And you're right. If these shadowy figures are negotiating behind the scenes, and they're saying, well, if you can just give us the backstop, we'll happily take the ECJ.
Well, Nigel Farage will not accept that. The problem he's got is you've got to kill off that 12% of votes, 14% of votes that will go towards the Brexit Party unless we have a clean Brexit. And anything to do with the deal will mean that Farage will have his straw man to kick against, and he'll be fighting in all these seats, and then you possibly allow a Remain alliance government led by Jeremy Corbyn with SNP support, Lib Dem support, Plaid and the Green.
Yeah, the Green.
The Green, yeah. But he did it in Brighton, the Green. But the point is, that's the mistake. The mistake, I don't know why he was saying October the 15th as an election date before the council. That to me was mad, because it meant that you would go into an election saying we'll get a deal 4 days after you make me Prime Minister to the Britain's public, and Farage will say, well, how can we trust him? And anyway, he wants a deal, and this deal is a surrender document in their language, so why do it?
So you think if you as I imagine lots of our special friends are, the special friend, there's only one special friend who listens to this podcast, I imagine the special friend is probably very, very sympathetic towards the Brexit Party and probably is relieved by that, because you reckon that if Boris had got the election before the October the 31st, do you think he could have easily shafted us more easily?
I think he's got to fight an election on a no-deal manifesto to win.
Yes. Oh, now you're talking my language.
I think he's got to, or else he won't win. And if I was Boris Johnson, I'm not, if I was advising government, which I don't, I would say, just go for no deal, go all out for no deal, and then win an 80-seat majority, 60-seat majority, whatever the polls say, 40%, 40-seat majority, which is what John Curtis said recently, apparently, and then tack back into the middle ground, which is what will happen anyway, and reclaim those moderate Tories and reconstruct the party from the right. That's what he's got to do, I think, to get us out and probably reform the Tory party.
Yeah, but Boris, we know from everything he's said and done, is not on the right of the party. He's pretty squishy actually in my book, and it's clear that
he's pro-immigration.
It's clear that his plan is to go for a spending splurge, and he's relying presumably on the kind of Laffer principles that if he reduces taxes, he'll actually increase the intake of the exchequer, and that's I'm prepared to support him in that, even though it's not my ideal small government, because I think he's going to deliver on so many other areas. But it's good to know that
I can't see any other option.
No.
I can't see any other option to deliver majority Tory government with a decent working majority, because basically during any 5-year cycle, 15 to 20 MPs, die, move across to the other side, are sacked by their own constituents. There's all sorts of... So you basically, you accrete, or you get rid of this majority will shrink and shrink. You need 30 or 40 to have a proper working majority. And I think if I were Boris Johnson, I would go for a hard Brexit and then tack back over 5 years. That's how you do it.
Just going back a bit through the last few... How long have you been a political correspondent?
Well, I've been a journalist all my life. I've been in the lobby for the past 13 years. I'm the longest-serving reporter at the Telegraph.
Oh, right, okay. So you've seen a bit of politics in the last few years. Do you share my horror at what a complete dog's breakfast various Conservative governments have made of the job of being Conservatives? I mean, I've sometimes... Well, I've spent many of the last 20 or so years spitting blood at what a useless shower that we've had representing.
What is your Conservative, James? What is your version of conservatism? Because that's a key question.
Okay. Limited government, strong defence of the realm and property rights. Obviously, you can't have a functional country without those things. Low taxes, liberty. Liberty, I think, is an element that's been missing a lot.
Soft drugs use?
I'm fine on those. I mean, I really don't
cannabis,
care about... Yeah,
fine.
Cannabis, really.
Yeah,
I'd legalise all drugs, actually. I'd also have much less stringent gun control, but that's the kind of American thing in me.
I don't know why that is.
What have I missed? Those seem to me obvious things.
And into that, you can explain your position on fox hunting, on all sorts of areas which current Tory governments run away from.
I'm also, by the way, I'm a free trader, but having said that, I don't sympathise with all those people who are criticising Donald Trump for his tariff policies on China, because I think China is the exception. I think China has changed the rules, and actually, China has been raping the global economy since it was admitted to the WTO in 2001, which is the subject of next week's podcast. And I don't think if they're not going to play fair, then you can't.
When was the last time a Tory government was delivering absolute Tory policies? Are you looking back to Thatcher mid-80s?
Yes. Yeah,
because she won the 79 election with Thatcherism didn't even start until 83 or 84, did it?
Absolutely right. It
existed for 6 years and then it stopped existing. So essentially, what you're going back to is a 6-year period of pure Thatcherism, and everything else is bunkum.
Yes, that would be me, and I realise that having talked to lots of people who know about Conservative history and stuff, that I'm not necessarily representative of Conservative tradition. That Margaret Thatcher...
It's the One Nation tradition, which
I despise One
what
Nation.
Theresa May talked about a lot.
Yeah.
David Cameron tried to go towards with modernising.
It's just Blairite. Look, it was interesting.
But it wins elections.
I heard...
Well, not for Theresa May, it did for David Cameron.
I heard Nick Timothy, who I liked much more...
On a podcast?
On the Chopper podcast, just now. And I spoke to him afterwards. He was really nice. I felt rather embarrassed about having slagged him off all the time.
He's a very nice bloke.
But he was saying that all One Nation Toryism was about, well, not having a divided nation, so black and white, and I don't know, rich and poor, north and south. But actually, I think that's a kind of handy apologia for what one nation. That's the theory. The reality is, one nation Toryism is conservatism watered down so much that you might as well be voting for Tony Blair, which is what David Cameron did.
Watered down, maybe, but to appeal to a wider group of people. What you're describing is a very narrow sliver of society, which wouldn't give you a majority government.
Well, look, you're talking counterfactual, so we don't know because we never had that opportunity. We never had David Cameron presenting what was the phrase at the time, clear blue water between the Conservatives and the Labour. He never did that. He wasn't in my book nearly radical enough. The only thing he was radical on was education, and that was because he was lucky enough to have.
Well, he picked up a Labour policy, didn't he? And that was all. That was a Labour policy which he inherited and quite liked. Yeah, because it was taking power away from local authorities.
I'm just being generous here. I'm giving you just in case you were going to come in and say, what about education? I'm conceding that point.
Well, in the old days, back in the days, one Tory idea which seemed quite interesting was vouchers.
I think vouchers are a great idea.
Rather than having you putting your kids through the education system, paying out of your tax income, and not using the taxes you're paying or not paying for your kids' education, just get vouchers that can be knocked off private school bills if you want them to.
I think vouchers. I don't know why that hasn't been revived. I think it's a good free market policy. I think there is definitely something wrong at the moment with the situation we've got with. Have you got children?
I'm sure, yeah, 3, yeah.
And are they private or are they
both? We'd be mixed and matched for various reasons.
Yeah. It's absolutely. Fraser Nelson was writing about this in The Spectator the other day. He was saying that we are known as the country where, even before your child is born, you start speculating nervously on how on earth you're going to deal with the education. It's a terrifying experience.
Isn't it actually? I also read a good piece in Spectator before that about someone from Canada was saying in Canada you send your kids to the local school, no one worries about it. The reason why everyone worries
look
about
at Canada. Look at what's happened to them.
The reason why everyone worries about where your kids go to school is because the parents want to meet other good parents at the school gate. It's all about networking and getting on in life. Forget the kids' education, it's who's at the school gate.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, and I've enjoyed that. I know that my children are going to be hanging out with the.
Your kids are private school.
Yeah, totally. They've just finished.
So you're very kindly funding my children's education, who are now in state schools.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, James Delingpole. And also, you're paying out of your taxed income for the kids' education. You're huge. You're just lifting the load off the state.
It's about time somebody thanked me for all that. But no
one thanks you enough.
They don't. They've just finished school. So all 3 children.
And then when they try and get into university, they're discriminated against because they're seen as being born with a silver spoon in their mouth.
Don't think I'm not very bitter about that. I really am actually. It's one of the few areas where I'm actually a bit of a sourpuss. I think that Oxford and Cambridge have been completely ruined by the Liberal left. There's a ghastly woman.
But isn't it right though? It's harder if you're at a state school to get schooled properly for a big university. So to make allowances for that in grades is a fair enough rebalance.
I think the job of a university is to educate the best, regardless of where they've been to school. And if privately educated children can perform well in the exams or in the interviews, then I don't see why they should be punished for those skills.
But a child who hasn't had the benefit of that schooling and that coaching won't get in. That's not fair.
Well, fair, I think, is one of the great mistakes of to view the world through a filter of it's not fair. I think what actually happens is you end up the system creating greater injustices than it solves. Look, I went to Catherine. You asked me who I've had on the podcast. Catherine Birbalsingh, who I totally love. I have got the hots for, and she's amazing. She's rejected.
You know
me
what hymn they sing twice a week? In their morning assembly. I vow to my country.
Oh, yeah.
They sing it twice a week.
Have you been there?
No, Roger Scruton told me to do. I phoned her up, and I think they sing Jerusalem, and I vow to thee my country, and it's extraordinary. It gives them a connection with the country they're in, Britain. It's just inculcates British values.
Do you know how many middle class children are at that school?
No,
one. They've got. I asked them about this, and
what's
you're
his name?
right.
Tarquin.
No. I think he's the son of a comprehensive school head or something like that. Okay. Anyway, you're right. There are very, very few white faces there. Most of the girls are wearing hijabs. These are the kind of. If this school were anywhere else, they would be having those. Knife arches before as the children came in. There would be dukings in the playground. You sit down when you go and visit the school. You sit down at a lunch table with the kids, and I had these were 11-year-olds, I think.
It's a primary school, isn't it?
It is a primary school. These were 11-year-olds, and we started talking about Brexit, and they were talking intelligently.
That's
Every
amazing.
child contributed, and they half the table was pro-Brexit. Now, can you imagine that in an average state school? They'd have all been brainwashed that Brexit is literally Hitler, because that's where.
So is it the teaching, you think, which produce these free-spirited, open-minded children, or so you think that? I mean, are you? Is Catherine? If you're saying if other schools aren't doing that, is that because of the head teacher, or is that the rules?
It's counterintuitive in that the incredible strictness and rigour of the environment. I mean, I described it as like a combination of a marine boot camp and a Trappist monastery, because they walk around in total silence, and the discipline is very, very severe.
Is that a bit sinister? Is it
No,
weird? Is it weird? Okay, because kids should be running around shouting, shouldn't they?
No, because you can see the joy in their faces. You see
they love it.
Yeah, they absolutely love it. But what I'm saying is,
kids run around the playground and sing and shout.
Interesting you say that.
Do you know what I mean?
Catherine's line on that is, she said, "Look, we can't be like Eton. I mean, Eton, which is where my boy went, is the opposite. It's kind of like it's like a libertarian experiment.
Yeah.
The kids don't have bedtimes. They decide when they.
So they have the discipline as a school,
so
and they like it. Do you think
they are free? They are free to do what they like, but there's a kind of subtle pressure exerted from their fellow boys.
Wow.
To do well.
Is it boys and girls?
No, it's boys. No,
boys only.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. Yeah, okay. But Catherine said to me that it would never work in the kind of environments that these children come from. There probably sometimes no books in the house.
Yeah.
There's no routine of discipline.
Yeah.
So the teachers have to provide that. A lot of the staff at
sounds amazing
at that school are very highly motivated. They're probably fresh out of Oxbridge, really eager. I don't know
how big is the school? Is it?
It's well, I mean, big enough that they have to have the children in 2 lunch sittings, because otherwise they couldn't fit.
And how many honours has she got, Catherine Birbalsingh?
She's got to be Lady Birbalsingh, hasn't she?
Dame.
Very soon.
Dame?
But, yeah.
Is she?
No, she's not yet. But
nothing at all.
She's a shoo-in because she ticks all the right boxes. I mean, the diversity and gender boxes.
But it sounds amazing. She's a heroine, isn't she?
Look, there are a few people I worship. Catherine Birbalsingh is one of them. Jacob Rees-Mogg is one. I was going to ask you about another of my heroes, because I've never met him. How much of a god, a shining god, a shining pated god, is Dominic Cummings?
Well, I've met him once for a cup of tea.
So you've met him once.
I've met him before the referendum in 2016. Yeah. I liked him. Then he was trying to sort of convince me how we could win the referendum, and he talked about the AV referendum. I think he was part of that. I think that's right. Well, perhaps the one in the against the John Prescott regional government plans in 2001. I think it was. I think I don't know. I don't really know. He wouldn't. I don't really know him to talk to either. I mean, I think he is a disruptor. I think he's just completely he's just causing a bit of chaos at the top of government and giving a bit of spine to Boris Johnson, who's arguably wouldn't have this kind of fixed determination to deliver Brexit if he wasn't there.
Do you not think that he's the reason really why I have such faith in Boris delivering Brexit? Because he is he seems to be several steps ahead of the opposition.
All the people running Number 10, when they're in their obituaries, the first line will be the Brexit vote in 2016. They know that, so they are personally invested in getting Brexit done. And frankly, if these guys can't do it, it will never happen. And all the chaos we're seeing in Parliament with people who don't want to appear to accept the vote properly in 2016, the courts ruling in Scotland just this week. This is an indication of what they're up against. And frankly, if that group can't do it, it's never going to happen. Yeah.
Have you been surprised by the resistance of the establishment to Brexit?
Well, I have been. I think it's surprising that they're not being fully open about their intentions, because they all campaign for, although Tom Watson is saying now this week, for having a second referendum. But I don't see how the second referendum resolves the argument.
No.
Because even if the polls are right and it's 55-45 for Remain in percent terms, how's that going to solve it? Because it's not going to look very fair to the 52-48 one, which was overturned. I just don't understand how a referendum resolves anything. The problem is that if you even look at Jacob Rees-Mogg, back in 2013, 2014, he was a reformer of the EU, not a leaver. And the vote, the vote in 2016 forced people into positions they never were in previously, and it's coming back from that position. I can't see it.
You've just reminded me of a story that was in the in Michael Ashcroft's biography of Jacob Rees-Mogg, and you've just had Michael Ashcroft.
Jacob's Ladder.
Jacob's Ladder. And did I know this? That when Jacob was trying to get on the parliamentary list in 2010, that Conservative Central Office tried to veto him because they wanted more working class, diverse, female.
I didn't see it.
Oh yeah. No, it was in the Mail on Sunday.
Because of course, in that same election, Annunziata Rees-Mogg was allowed to stand as Nancy Rees-Mogg. Remember that? That was the other.
I thought did she actually stand?
It was 05.
I thought she was not allowed.
Was
not
to stand. Allowed, or she tried to stand in 05. I forget the actual
details. David Cameron said that Old Etonian David Cameron said that Annunziata was too posh a name, and that she's campaigned as Nancy. Hasn't David got a daughter called Nancy? I think possibly.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I forget all the
possibly. Yeah,
names.
he's such a yesterday's man.
Well, he's about
now.
to be in the news next week, isn't he? His book's out shortly.
Yeah, but no one's going to care.
You met David Cameron a few times, haven't you? You old Etonians. You were meeting some club.
I wasn't Eton. No,
you weren't there.
No, I knew him in Oxford. No, we smoked dope together in my rooms in Christchurch.
Oh right.
That was the big. That was my brief hour of notoriety, because in Ashcroft's and Isabel Oakeshott's biography of Dave, I vouchsafe that when I'd been at Oxford, we'd been in this thing called the Flam Club.
The Flam Club. 3
members. We used to listen to Supertramp albums and listen to the Flams, which is like a sort of like a drum beat where the beats come close together to form almost a single sound, like that. Okay. And Supertramp were big on those, and we appreciate those while listening to Crime of the Century.
Right.
And this appeared in the book, and I was on the front page of the Mail as the first journalist ever to have admitted to taking drugs with the Prime Minister. but I seriously thought then, and I did think now, and this was my reasoning when I agreed to go on the record with this. Dope is not a thing anymore. No one cares.
Why did you wait so long to go on the record, given it was not a public interest back in 2005 when he became Prime Minister?
Funny you mentioned that. I was sweet-talked by the then editor by Eleanor Mills, I think it was, on the Sunday Times. Sweet-talk into doing a piece called something like "The David Cameron I Knew at Oxford," and I was going to mention en passant that about and then I realised that I'd been sucked into a trap. I mean, Eleanor is lovely and very persuasive, but I realised that the only thing they gave a toss about was I took drugs at Oxford with David Cameron. So after consultation with Michael Gove, I backtracked and decided, and I then
this is what date was this? 2005.
Don't know when it was, but the then editor of the Sunday Times, what's he called?
John Witherow.
John Witherow was so cross that he banned me from ever writing for the Sunday Times again, which was quite a big deal because they used to pay quite well. So I really took a massive hit there. I mean, I don't regret it necessarily, and I actually got a personal call from Dave. Thanking me for not doing this. By the time that you're right. By the time my revelations came out, they really didn't have much market value because Dave was already a kind of lame duck prime minister. No one really cared about him anymore.
It didn't matter so much. I mean, back in the day, perhaps then it was drugs was a big thing. 10 years before that, it was if you were gay or not, and these things have less currency nowadays, don't they?
By the way,
no one cares.
I think it's very amusing. You are, of all the guests I've ever had on the podcast, you are the one that's interviewed me most. You can't help it. I think it's really good.
Do you mind?
Not at all. No, it's absolutely. I love talking about myself, and actually, I think sometimes the special friend who listens to this is thinking, if only I could hear a bit more about James Delingpole.
Well, I think I might stop speaking now and let you speak.
Yeah, but I don't know what to say now. Now I've gone into question answering mode. No, actually, I do. I wanted to ask you about something that you mentioned. We were talking before the Chopper podcast about this. I asked you whether, when you were growing up, there was a stage when you thought that you looked at the House of Lords, in as much as anyone thinks about the House of Lords when you're young, which you don't at all. No. But I had this view of the establishment as being this noble and decent thing. And since I've been middle-aged, I just look at the kind of reptilian creeps who get elected to the House of Lords, which I think should be hereditary still. I think it was a big mistake. I think Tony Blair's reformation of the House of Lords was one of the biggest constitutional disasters of this country.
They're currently around 70 or 80, aren't there?
Yeah.
Since the reforms in 98, that's it.
Yeah.
They're elected, by the way, of course.
The kind of people who get into the House of Lords now, so we've got Gavin Barwell, or Hamsterface as I call him, one of the least talented Conservative ministers ever, probably. What was the one thing he was good at? Being doggedly loyal to the worst Prime Minister in history. His reward for this, to be elevated to the House of Lords, to be called Lord Barwell for the rest of his life, probably to get better tables in restaurant, and to scrutinise laws from a conservative, to represent Conservative. When I'm thinking, I don't want this creep, this squish, representing Team Conservative. I don't want him in the House of Lords at all. He gets £300 a day for turning up.
Can I answer that in two ways, or 2 points? I think that the Tories need more peers in the House of Lords.
Yeah,
but without doubt Tories. But he's a Tory. I think that having people who can push a Tory message, because the party is hopelessly outgunned by lots of Lib Dems, disproportionate number of Lib Dem peers, plus Labour peers, plus a lot of crossbenchers. I think the party has so it's very hard to get anything through from a Tory point of view. The Tory government often gets things through purely because it's elected and has this kind of this more power in our constitution, such as it is. But if you're criticising the honours, which you seem to be from the PM's resignation honours list, I do think it's dreadful the way it looks like the nearer you are to the PM, the more likely you are to get an honour. I mean, I don't know what Catherine Burble-Singh's got in terms of honours, but there are these heroes out there who are not getting recognised, in my view. And then it seems the nearer you are to the sun, or near you are to the kind of the life-giving force at the heart of government, the more likely you are to get rewarded.
Well, exactly. When I was grumbling about this to my wife, she was saying it was ever thus, and of course it was.
I wish it
was
weren't.
Ever thus.
And to what degree, though, do you think? And I think maybe that as we get, you said you were middle-aged then. That was your words, and I would say I'm middle-aged. As you get older, everyone else is your age. The policemen are your age. The PM is a bit nearer your age.
Yeah.
The peers are more your age, and you become a bit more frustrated, and you think, crumbs, what have they got that I haven't got, and why are they doing that and I could do that? And to a degree, when you were younger and Margaret Thatcher was 30 or 40 years older than you, and other people around her looked like your grandparents' age or your parents' age. So a degree, we're all getting older, and also to degree familiarity breeds contempt. So you're seeing more of them on social media, they're tweeting, and people getting a bit more cross. I just wonder whether, because we change, we have a different view of our political leaders, and that changes too.
No, I think it's more than that. I think that there is no question that if you're going to have Conservatives in the Lords, it should be Lord Delingpole, Lord Toby Young at a push, although he's a bit of a cuck. Lady Burble-Singh, I think, would be fantastic.
Yes.
But Lord Scruton,
yes.
Lord Douglas Murray, we're the kind of people who should be in the Lords.
Lord Douglas Murray, it means he's the son of an earl, by the course.
Yeah, sorry.
So you mean Lord Murray of Oxford?
The reason I said Lord Douglas Murray was, you're absolutely. I admire your pernickety.
I work for Telegraph. I know these things.
That's true. Does the Telegraph Court and Social still does that still operate?
Of course it does, and we have a style book written by Simon Heffer, lately of this parish, which sets out that the son of an earl is Lord Douglas Murray, but a peer in his own right is Lord Murray of Oxford.
Yes, well, Lord Murray would be excellent. But the thing is, people like the way the left operates is so good at blackening the name of anyone who's to the right of Gavin Barwell, say, to make us look like we're Nazis, and therefore any attempt to elevate us to the Lords, as would be entirely proper, is going to be rejected by the sort of left-wing Twitter mob.
It's not, though, is it? Because there's a House Lords Appointments Commission, which I think Charles Moore sits on, the former editor of the Telegraph, which vets names as they come forward. The problem is that they have to announce. They have cohorts of groups of people to announce. So you get 3 Tories, 3 Labour, a Lib Dem and a Green or something every so often. Yeah. So you can't really. The problem with there's an inbuilt bias against the Tory party in the House of Lords, which is going to be hard to overcome.
Do you think? So
unless you scrap it.
So what are you saying? You think I should join the Green Party? Do you think I might Because actually,
if you want a peerage, if you want an honour,
yeah,
you want to be a Lib Dem. You've got loads of knights.
Yeah, but I'm not into kiddie fiddling or transvestism.
You can't say that.
Oh, come on.
You cannot say that.
Cyril Smith. If you look at the Liberal Democrats' record on perversion, they are the party of the perverts. There's no doubt about it.
I am not going to comment on this conversation.
No. Well, it is the liberal mindset. Just before we go, I used to one of my big regrets in life journalistically is that. My friend Susanna Gross used to edit the Mail books pages and give me really good books to review, and they used to pay really well. And one week, as a favour to a friend, she gave me this book to edit on the history of liberalism. And I read about a page of it, and I thought, I love you, Susanna, even as a favour to you, even though I'm going to get paid for this, even though whatever friend... This is such unmitigated shite. There is no argument for classical liberalism. Obviously, the kind of thing that I am. That's great. But liberalism, I think, is
it's a small L and capital L. Isn't
actually
it?
worse than socialism or communism or anything. I think there was nothing.
Did
more...
you review the book after you?
No. I just thought. I
can't read it. But wouldn't it be an interesting review to you to take on and to go through this book, even though you disagree with every single word of the book?
No, because it was like wrestling. It would have been like wrestling jelly. I simply couldn't get a handle on this world view. It was like reading Sanskrit or something.
The problem with Lib Dems for a lot of certainly on the Labour side and probably the Tory side is that they are hard to pin down, and they appear to have different. They can often shapeshift into the opposition wherever they are in the country, and that's always been the problem. With Labour and Tories historically have been pretty clear on where they stand. You mentioned earlier low tax of the Tories and state intervention on the Labour side. But the Lib Dems can shapeshift, and that is what is so frustrating if you're trying to fight them in a by-election or election. I've been told by other parties that they can't pin them down because they move and reform into the opponent.
It's very funny that I was once at a dinner with Jesse Norman. And Jesse Norman referred to this as playing the Lib Dem game, and being a constituency MP and going big for the local hospital and all this stuff, and it's how you keep your seat. But funnily enough, when I quoted him on this later on, he denied all knowledge of this of this phrase, which I thought kind of reflected badly on him. Why I don't like career safety in politicians.
I had some great hits in my early days at the Telegraph when. The last Labour government was closing around 2,500 post offices.
Yes,
and a lot of these ministers in the cabinet. I remember Jack Straw doing it. Posed outside their local branch, save our post office, and they were backing the national policy. And there's this complete disconnect between it's all right for 2,500 to close across the country, but I want to fight the one in my backyard. And this disconnect, which you're describing, was probably understood by the MP. But looked a bit ridiculous when in the pages of the Telegraph.
Well, you wonder that, because actually I think that unfortunately this kind of messaging seems to work well with the public. They seem to be... A lot of people
understanding them. I think it's ridiculous.
I'm torn. On the one hand, I'm a great believer in the wisdom of crowds, and I do believe that's the case, which is why I'm so confident about Brexit, by the way. I do believe that when the tide of history and the British people decide something, that's the way it's going to go, inevitably sooner or later. So on the one hand, I believe in the wisdom of crowds, and yet at the same time, the conversations that you and I are having, the kind of the sort of audience we're addressing with our sort of wonkish discussions about politics.
One person.
There are very, very few people. They're not representative of the country at large. Most people don't know who these MPs are. They don't. Probably they've seen Boris Johnson getting stuck on a.
They shouldn't know who Speaker Bercow is.
They shouldn't know.
Who
no,
he
they
is.
bloody well
but they
shouldn't.
Bloody well do now.
They bloody well do. Before we go, one other thing that struck me. I don't know whether you observed this about Labour MPs. I see a lot of Labour MPs. I'm not sure what these people actually believe anymore, other than in identity politics. You look at the who's that blonde one who'd be quite fit if she lost a slightly bit of weight?
I have no idea you're talking about.
Or Jess Phillips. I've never seen... I think Jess Phillips is the most overrated MP in history, because all she does... I don't believe she believes in anything other than playing the cry-bully, I'm a feminist, and it really matters to me.
I don't think that's fair. I think
of course you wouldn't think it's fair, because you go native, you people.
I'm not native with her at all. No. I think
What does she believe in?
She's an amazing campaigner for women's rights. She's
that's bollocks in itself, isn't it?
Women's refuges and...
Okay, sorry. Just.
I think so.
She campaigns for women's rights. What is the problem with women's rights in this country? What rights do women not have? If she were out there campaigning for the rights of women in the Muslim world, campaigning against hijab, I can understand it. She's not. She's campaigning for a feminist war, which has been won long, long ago. So I don't count that as it. So what else does she believe in?
Well, I don't really know her politics. I mean, I think
that's it.
She is against Brexit, and that everyone defines themselves now in politics if you're pro anti-Brexit, and I think that the parties are moving towards recognising the vote in 2016. I think what's happening. So Labour's going pro Remain, apart from Corbyn, who can't quite acknowledge that.
Do you think there's anything in my view that we are about to enter a new golden era of conservatism under Boris, and that we're going to get sort of Thatcher Mark II?
Well, I think I just described to you how I think that can happen, but I think he's got to grasp the nettle of a hard Brexit to get to that position.
Yes, but
the sunny uplands you're describing, because I think he'll then, if he does that, if Dominic Cummings will listen to this, he would do that and then tack back into the centre, because he's basically quite a soft Tory anyway, isn't he?
Yeah, I like your analysis apart from the tacking back to the centre bit.
But he'll do that.
And that, yes,
because that's where the votes are, James. They aren't where you are in politics. Well, you're going to say it's never been tested.
I'm just saying.
But no party wants to risk it.
Look it up. Dog shit yogurt fallacy. Anyway, thank you, Chopper Christopher Hope, for being a lovely special guest on the podcast. Listen to Chopper's podcast, which is funnily enough called Chopper's Brexit Podcast, and he's going to be. I think you're going to be speaking at Podcast Live,
yeah,
on October the 5th. But I fear, have we not been scheduled at the same time? Which is crazy.
I'm 1 p.m. Are you 1 p.m?
I don't know. I haven't looked at the time yet.
Well, I'll tell you what. If I'm there and you're on, I'll go to yours. Will you come to mine?
Yes, I will. If we don't clash,
we shake on that now?
We'll shake on that.
Deal.
Yeah, deal. Good.
Thanks for having me on. It's been great fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.